to Start All Wars, Waiting for Hitler, 1914 to 1929, Chapter 3, Adolf Hitler, German Nationalist, 1914 through 1919. Adolf Hitler lived from 1889 to 1945, but this chapter looks at roughly the first 29 years of his life. When asked if anyone ever embodied pure evil, the most common answer is probably Hitler. This has prompted historians and psychologists to write whole books trying to understand him. From Amazon.com's review, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian John Toland's classic, definitive biography of Adolf Hitler remains the most thorough, readable, accessible, and as much as possible, objective account of the life of a man whose evil effect on the world in the 20th century will always be felt. Did Hitler hate so many people because of his strict and abusive father? Did he hate so many people because he flunked out of art school? Because he lived like a homeless person in Austria before World War I? Because he met some Jews he didn't like? Because the mayor of Vienna, Austria, made anti-Jewish speeches? Maybe. But Dr. Edward Block treated Hitler when he was 15 in 1904. Dr. Block was Jewish. Hitler sent him postcards. And after Hitler took over Austria in 1938, the former patient was even awarded the Block's special protection. Ultimately, I do not understand Hitler's deep psychology. Some sources say he could be charming and kind in person, and yet 4 of his girlfriends committed suicide. There was Gayle Rabel, who lived to be 23, who may or may not have been Hitler's girlfriend. She was his niece. There was Eva Braun, who lived to be 33. Hitler and Braun were married the day before their suicide. Now, Hitler didn't write much. Had he done so, we would have a greater insight into his mind. He didn't even give written orders to the Nazis. Some say that that was on purpose. He did not want any documents to lead to his execution. Now, Hitler had started a second book, which was written in 1928, but not published until 1961. It contains his thoughts on foreign policy. So much of what we know comes from his one published political book, his speeches, and reports from others about what he said and what he did. Some people believe they deeply understand Hitler. Maybe they are right. As a soldier, even though he wasn't from Germany, Hitler was fervently dedicated to Germany. Simultaneously, it appears that he had no other close relationships. He was not close to his family. He did not have close personal friends. He tended to lecture more than discuss. And his fellow soldiers nicknamed him the White Crow, and also the Woman Hater. Although he was given medals for bravery twice, his fellow soldiers couldn't get along with Hitler. They never socialized with him because he was relentlessly militant. The soldiers nicknamed him the White Crow and the Woman Hater. In the muddy trenches, with the continual threat of poison gas, Hitler was obsessed with cleanliness. At this point in his life, Hitler avoided tobacco, alcohol, and women. Many people thought that he was obsessed with keeping things clean. Many historians and psychologists wonder or are convinced that for Hitler, it was an absolute requirement. It was a heartbeat for his life, cleanliness. Hitler was temporarily blinded in October of 1918. He was temporarily blinded in a mustard gas attack, and then Corporal Hitler was hospitalized. When he heard that Germany lost, he later said he went blind again. But then later, he said he cured himself of his blindness through his own willpower. When dictators establish a cult of personality, they always say that willpower is number one. Hitler even had a propagandist write, edit, and direct the 1935 film Triumph of the Will. The film's key theme is that Hitler is returning Germany to greatness. The movie was an instant success, and ever since 1945, it lands on almost every list of the top 100 best World War II movies. Not because the list makers are endorsing Nazism. Triumph of the Will perfectly expresses how Hitler and the Nazis wanted to be perceived. The filmmakers were masters of cinematic technique. Then there is the stab in the back myth and what Hitler thought about it. Bitter that Germany had surrendered, Hitler's hatred of the leadership evolved into the stab in the back myth. This said that the soldiers never lost a battle, but they were betrayed by the politicians and generals who lost the war for the soldiers. So, who are the leaders whom Hitler believed stabbed ordinary German soldiers and people in the back? Well, the very first one is self-contradictory, but Jewish capitalists whose war funding was crucial, but they did it because they liked B, communism, which was supposed to be a worldwide movement, and thus not good for nationalistic Germany or capitalism. Then there was Kaiser Wilhelm II. But he wasn't actually there anymore because the Germans overthrew their government in 1917, even as they kept fighting the war for a whole another year. He also blamed weak democratic leaders in the Weimar Republic, which was Germany's brand new fragile democracy. However, blaming both the democracy and the king is very interesting because those two groups don't necessarily get along either. He also blamed any other politician or person with money who just wanted to get this stalemate of World War I, this total war that had engulfed all of German society, over with. Now, while some wars, like the American Civil War and World War II, end with total victory for one side and a total loss for the other, a lot of wars actually end with compromises. And ideally, some wars end on relatively good terms, like the American Revolutionary War, and I guess also World War II, where the nations involved ultimately become great friends. But other wars, of course, end with everybody being angrier than they were at the start of the war. So what did Hitler do immediately after the sour end of World War I? With no formal education or career to fall back on, 29-year-old Hitler stayed in the army. Some believe that the army was the one place Hitler felt like a success and connected to someone or something. After all, he was not close to his family. He had no close personal friends. He was borderline unemployed, certainly underemployed, before the war. He often lived as a homeless man in Vienna. He flunked out of art school twice. The man had no education, no prospects, no employment, no family, no friends. The army was the place where Hitler appeared to have felt like a success. But with the war over, the army didn't have much for Hitler to do. By July of 1919, they made him into a spy. His orders? Infiltrate and report on the German Workers' Party. But when he went to the meetings, Hitler found himself agreeing with the party's anti-Jewish, anti-free market, and anti-Marxist ideas. The man in charge, Anton Drexler, wanted a strong government, no Jews, socialism, and unity among all Germans, with many exceptions, such as Jewish Germans. Soon, Hitler was blazing the room with fiery speeches. They loved it. On September the 12th, 1919, Hitler became the 56th member, but his card said number 555. They started counting at 500 because they wanted Germans to think their movement was catching on. The Third Reich, from beginning to end, was an empire of lies. So then the German Workers' Party changed its name in 1919 to 1920. What did they change it to and why? Well, to increase their appeal, they adopted the National Socialist German Workers' Party, which I reprint in German. So Nazi in English is actually NSDAP in German. The Nazi Party was essentially choosing buzzwords for its title. And then Hitler redesigned the swastika in 1920. Now, this symbol is actually at least 5,000 years old, and it comes from India. But Hitler redesigned it in 1920. It was stark and modern. It was black, red, and white. Intensely vivid, the Nazis turned it into armbands, banners, flags, basically anything and everything. In their home city of Nuremberg, they marched with thousands of swastikas at night, holding candles in an event that reminded people of a religious service, although no religion really thrived under the Nazis. Did the Nazis have occult origins? Maybe. One leader of the German Workers' Party, Dietrich Eckart, was an enthusiastic member of the Thule Society, which was an occult group that believed that the ancient Germans came from a northern island, maybe Plato's Atlantis. On this island, the myths say the inhabitants had pure Aryan blood. Now, I didn't research this much. I can't see it leading anywhere because sometimes it is just hard to know where ideas come from. Either way, the Nazi program itself soon became fairly well defined. This is a quote from Hitler. The main plank in the National Socialist program is to abolish the liberalistic concept of the individual and the Marxist concept of humanity, and to substitute for them the folk community, rooted in the soil and bound together by the bond of its common blood.